Hello everyone. This lecture series was brought to you as a courtesy of Raj Malhotra IAS Institute, Chandigarh. Today happens to be the 20th anniversary of 9/11 attacks. With respect to the same, Indian Express has also brought out an article in its explained series, which is why we are going to discuss this very topic in detail today. So, Amitabh Mato says that no other event of 21st century has impacted international relations in such a manner as 9/11 incident did. Till today, the international community is grappling with the repercussions of this very attack. So, the South Asia, which had been the nerve center of this very attack, as we know that the attack was carried out from Afghanistan, it was planned in Afghanistan. So, what is the security situation in South Asia before 9/11 and what is it after 20 years of 9/11? So, when we speak of South Asia, India and much of South Asia along with Afghanistan was grappling with insurgency and terror attacks from time before 9/11. And after the American departure, what we see today is that South Asia still remains divided, less at peace with itself, and the levels of insecurity have only heated rather than cooling down. Today, more terrorist groups operate in Afghanistan than ever before. We can recently see that ISIS has also started having its imprint in this very territory with a recent attack on the Hamid Karzai International Airport, which left about 100 people dead. In past years, we had various terrorist attacks such as the Easter bombing in Sri Lanka. There is rise of fundamentalism in Bangladesh, and Pakistan, which has earlier wanted to be a modern Islamic state, today appears to be under the grip of Islamization entirely. So yes, South Asia is no better than it was before 9/11 today. Now, when we speak of 9/11 and the response that it elicited from United States, we say that the United States response was overwhelming in nature. Why was this overwhelming? And it is also said that this response was more a demonstration of American hegemonic might than a counter to Al-Qaeda. Because if it had been against Al-Qaeda entirely, then a proportionate response could have been taken. However, no, it wasn't that way. So, why was it? Because 9/11, let us see the answer. 9/11 did not just lead to the collapse of World Trade Center, but it also ruptured the very imagination in international politics, and also with this, the stature of US as an impenetrable hegemonic power of the world. So why do we say this thing? Number one, it broke the myth of American impenetrability. So America had always thought that whenever it wanted itself to seclude from the affairs of the world, it can, and it can start looking at inwards. When the entire world, when we speak of history, when the entire world was dealing with colonies and there were fighting going on in Europe with respect to capturing of colonies in Asia and other parts, America quietly carried on with its economic growth, and no one touched America at that point in time. Even during World War I and World War II, America jumped into the war at its own convenience and when it wanted, and not at the behest of any other country. And with the rise of the Trump in America, we can see there was this tendency again coming up when America has started receding from the international stage. However, this very myth of impenetrability of America was broken down when ICBM, that is intercontinental ballistic missiles, came into picture. So when we see the American map on the world, we see that America does not touches many territories, many countries. On top of it, we see Canada, which is largely friendly with it and is not a hostile nation in any manner. And towards the downside of America, we see many impoverished countries which actually could not impact America in any other manner. Now, any other power which was there was at considerable distance from America. Africa is at a considerable distance, Asia is at a considerable distance, but with the coming up of ICBM, that is intercontinental ballistic missiles, yes, this impenetrability myth was broken to a bit. However, by the attack of 9/11 at the heart of America in New York, this myth was busted forever. Now, this also served as an upfront to American might, as this attack came from a very remote region of the world, and that too by non-state actors, not even a complete state. And these very actors were actually extremely ill-equipped when it came to comparison with America. This also stood as an upfront to the Westphalian system. Now, Westphalian system had this conception that international security can be achieved when the world is divided into various states and every state respects each other's sovereignty and will not meddle into one another's internal affairs. But what of non-state actors? It had never imagined the non-state actors will also have this sort of capability, that it can really impact the most mightiest nation on the international floor. So this is why it also ruptured international political thinking. Then Francis Fukuyama, after the collapse of Soviet Union, had said that this is the collapse or the end of history. USA had thought that its liberalism has triumphed and its hard and soft power is undisputed in the world. Basically, USA became the world superpower, the world hegemon from 1990s onwards till we can say the end of 2010, or the world depression is when it started in 2008. So USA basically stayed at the helm of the world for about only 20 years. Whereas when we compare, and Francis Fukuyama said that this is the end of history, because he thought that there were only two superpowers in the world. One was this communism, espousing communism, other was espousing these concepts of liberalism. When one has actually lost and disintegrated, now only this very philosophy is going to go on, and no other power can come and stand up as an affront to United States. However, when we see history, there were other empires such as the British Empire, the Ottoman Empire, the Greeks, which actually were hegemons of the world for more than centuries. However, their empires also did collapse. Their hegemonic position was also taken by other empires. For Francis Fukuyama to say this with respect to United States, it did not bode well with many other people. This very thought could not be accepted by many other people. However, US did accept this very thought, and which is why it also ignored the rise of political Islam being used for political purposes. It had started, extremist attacks had already started in Africa and in Gulf region. However, USA saw them as some local events also. Even there was a crude attack, there was an attack on a pipeline in Manhattan by one such extremist, and USA again ignored it. So this illusion was entirely shattered by 9/11, which began in another chapter on global politics. This illusion of triumph of liberalism and undisputed hard power, basically. That what was this hard power of use? When a non-state actor can actually attack you. That too, your very nerve centers, centers in which your population is staying. Lastly, speaking of 9/11 Commission. So 9/11 Commission was established so as to see as to where did United States actually fell short in anticipating these attacks. So it said, and it concluded, that basically it was a failure of imagination on the part of US. US did not see these threats from the very severity from which these threats emerging from these rise of political Islam should have been seen. And despite of the most complex military infrastructure complex having, and the most comprehensive intelligence infrastructure also, which has been supplemented by various real-time information from allies, USA failed. Which is why, to counter all of this thing, USA had to give a response which wasn't proportionate, but it had to establish its might again on international floor. Now, why do we categorize this thing? The response of US is overwhelming. Let us see this thing. First of all, with respect to the swiftness of attack, it launched attack pretty swiftly on Afghanistan and did not lose any moment with respect to that. Then building of Taliban. It actually did support Taliban at a certain point in time, supported non-state actors to fight non-state actors at certain point in time. Then creation of consensus in UN with respect to war on terror. So it quickly brought on all the countries on board in United Nations with respect to its agenda of war on terror. The philosophy with which US was going on at that point in time is that either you're with us or you are against us. Then neutralization of the core of Al-Qaeda. Al-Qaeda's core, its main team, were very soon neutralized. Killing of Osama bin Laden in Pakistan's sovereign territory. The USA went to an extent of violating a country's sovereign territory in order to actually kill its so-called enemy. Then there was unreasonable intervention in Iraq in the name of weapons of mass destructions. And mission creep, that is a forever wars in Afghanistan and building its democracy and civil society. Mission creep का क्या मतलब होता है? It is again a military term which says when a military deflects from its main objectives and enters into long-term commitments. That happened in the case of Afghanistan. So this says that this response was overwhelming. Why to carry on for such a long war? Violating other countries' sovereign territory itself, basically supporting non-state actors at certain point in time. And leaving the international community with no choice but to support it in this war on terror. Now, what has been the unfortunate fallout of 9/11? So as I told you earlier, the 9/11 did raise the questions at the hard power of the US. However, the actions that USA took, it raised questions on its soft power also. Why do I say this very thing? So basically, US stabbed its chief ethos in war against terror. It created an Orwellian state. Orwellian का मतलब big boss, जहाँ पे state आपको हमेशा देख रही है. For American citizens itself, it started invading the privacy of American citizens, and not just American citizens but its allies as well. And this was an example of this is the Patriot Act or the PRISM, जिसके लिए एडवर्ड स्नोडन को ढूंढा जा रहा है. USA, which has been the champion of human rights, it created detention centers like Guantanamo Bay and Abu Ghraib prison in Iraq, where people will be put in detention without trial for numerous years. Then it legitimized torture practices such as waterboarding and wiretaping. This became the modus operandi of the intelligence system in US. Moreover, it vilified Islam and its actions led to the spread of Islamophobia. This is done by an inclusive state, which is also known for its acceptance of diversity. Here we are talking about USA. So USA has been an inclusive society. However, this very attack struck this very inclusivity and led to rise of Islamophobia in the world, which is a very negative thing to happen. This also facilitated largely the unabated rise of China. All the eyes were off from China's rise, and this led to the creation of an adversary which, if we see, is the very opposite of USA's polity. And lastly, it abandoned its allies and left them as collateral damage in Afghanistan. So how is one supposed to trust USA in future if one has to actually make any commitments? So this is all with respect to how America's response to 9/11 was its biggest failure of imagination. Not only was its response unproportionated, however, the repercussions that this response has had in the rise of China in creating a more unstable society in South Asia, in leaving its allies as collateral damage, and more than this, in impacting its soft power stature also. So this has, from any angle, if we are to analyze this thing, naturally it can be categorized as a blunder. So this is all with respect to today's lecture. Should you have any doubts, feel free to put those doubts in the comment section. I am also attaching the PDF of this very lecture as with this very video. Thank you and have a nice day.